rural,
Other
but
stuff to do.
it was a 50-mile
5 o'clock, I'm still
drive,
sitting there.
shortest distance, 75 miles.
I've never seen you not well, actually, a couple times.
That's a long drive.
It's a big difference. I mean, it was, and you get worse mileage on the highway. At 75 miles an hour, you get worse mileage than you do at 50 miles an hour. So.
Absolutely.
Harder on your car.
Yep. The only time that I would have probably thought about the other is during the winter time.
job, huh?
Those back roads were maintained in the winter, but
All your trucks hauling in there?
They were maintained
hire-
less well,
we
which
hire
makes it
about
more
a dozen
fun.
trucks a day, right?
fair enough. Fair enough. Two sides to every coin, right? A little more exciting.
Yeah. I would oftentimes there's a cutoff. Do you know New Canada Road? Like it cuts off the corner of Danbury. Like it goes up to
London, right?
it goes like it basically like it's you can go to Ragged Mountain from either direction on that road, but
Okay.
it cuts off a couple miles, but it's a dirt road. And like I would take that just for fun.
Nice. That is fun. That is fun.
Pretty well. How are you doing?
Although I'm sure the
I
residents
think
got
it's that.
I was there when I set up the room
50
earlier.
miles an hour down their 35-mile-an-hour road. But
That's true. I'm sure it was a rare occasion.
you can think that.
For legal purposes, it was a rare occasion.
Yeah.
Whoops.
No, it was fun.
Sorry about that. I threw my pen at you.
All right. I can't do. These are the minutes of the meeting. I was not here anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So
Fine.
I'm not.
Fine.
I will not move from this. Emily. A good turnout tonight.
Yeah,
limping a bit,
great.
but mostly
Wow. So you did it with yourself.
I'll take a walk now.
Wes Davis was
Multi ibuprofen.
Wow.
So,
Really did
heading in a good direction.
fun week.
No, it was funny because it was everything's connected, right? So I
Yeah.
took my knee out.
Other side.
Well, yeah, it was like one.
All right, it's 6:30. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start off with a roll call of the members. Matt Yett and myself, chair, present. Susan Wood,
Present.
John Christ,
And here I am.
Phil Limmer, present. Michael Bouchard is excused tonight. Molly McCann,
I'm here.
Neil McIver, and alternates Bradford Puffer.
Yep.
Thanks, Dan.
You were projecting really well though, so
Thank you.
it was fine. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, all. Welcome. We'll start off with a review of the minutes from September 4th planning board meeting.
I only had a question.
Yes.
Just a kind of a follow-up question more for Joseph. On page 4, at the very last line, says that the chair requested a more detailed table of affected roads and zoning for future discussion. I don't think that's in the packet.
Correct. That is there. We have done that at this point,
Oh,
and
it is
Avery's
there,
done a lot
okay.
on that too, but it is not in the packet for this
Okay.
evening. Though we can certainly make that available to the board
That's great.
as we would like to move forward.
Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes
I
of
second.
September 4th.
I second. Sorry.
If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions?
Abstention.
Do we have enough to pass?
I also abstain. You're good though.
Okay.
Perfect. Two abstentions.
You and me, Sue.
Just takes a majority of voters.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to item number 4 on the agenda, communications received by the board.
Sure, I'll give a couple of quick communications here. So, following up from the communication I referenced at the last meeting, the 10-year plan hearings have been scheduled. So, that is with regards to the proposed NHDOT draft 10-year plan, which does remove the Smithbridge Road project. That is, the draft plan does not include it, and also does not include the North Main Street bike ped and realignment project. So if anybody would like to weigh in on the proposed draft 10-year plan, that will be the item of discussion October 20th at 6 p.m. at the Pease Public Library. And if anybody wants more information on that, they can certainly contact us in the planning department. It's also available on the NHDOT 10-year plan webpage. They keep that pretty updated. Minor communication here. The public members of the Economic Development Committee have been selected by the Select Board, and that committee, I expect an update soon on first meeting. I also have a very positive update following up from our conversation also at the last meeting. The Railroad Square charrette application was approved, so Plan New Hampshire has given us a formal thumbs up that they would like to come to Plymouth, bring their expertise, their team, to help us engage with the community and help envision some future possibilities for that area. We don't have a point person yet, but once we do have a point person from Plan New Hampshire who's working with us on it, they can help give us some guidance on how we should be moving forward to prepare for that on the town's end. But that is formally selected. We don't have any kind of date, any kind of certainty about timeline other than that they said spring of next year, and I would expect perhaps later spring because I think that's a better time to do it, but we'll have to wait and see what they have for availability. They are volunteers, so perhaps that there might be some flexibility there. And then lastly, the 6-word stories seem to have been a good success. We had those out around town in the various locations. Avery was able to get it out into the community in a couple of locations too, which is great. All in all, we expect a little over 100 responses, which is really positive. Big success with the recycling center. That was our most popular location. About 50 responses came from the recycling center alone. So that was a good call, being able to put one there. And thanks to the recycling center, the library, the senior center, and town hall for hosting. Everybody who we asked was very gracious and let us set up these bulky displays in their place of business, and they were super positive, enthusiastic, and really happy that people liked them. At least 100 plus people liked them enough to fill out a card. Those are my communications at this time.
May I ask a question about communications not received?
Sure.
Or at least I presume not received.
Okay.
I believe we were supposed to receive notification 3 or 4 months ago at this point about the housing champions,
Yeah.
the unfunded housing champions.
Yes.
And has anything happened there, or even a story about what the new notification date might be, or anything?
Good question. So I recently checked our portal, and by recently, it was a few weeks ago, but in the scheme of, the decision timeline we were made aware of, quite a bit after that still, and our request application is still listed as pending in the portal. So really no updates. We can always contact someone over there at BEA and see if they have any insight into that, or try to find something out from them. But at this time, at least based on the information we can see in our application portal, it's still open. It's not formally accepted or declined.
Great, thank you. That's great news about the charrette.
Very exciting.
Exciting.
Definitely.
Superb. Moving on to item number 5 on the agenda tonight, applications and public hearings. Joseph, we have no applications tonight, correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right,
Just
excellent.
a couple of folks who reached out about conceptual consultations, but no applications.
All right, we'll move on to item number 6 on the agenda, informational and pre-application reviews. We'll start off with the first one listed, Brandon Pike, Common Man Conceptual Consultation of 43 and 45 Main Street. Is Mr. Pike with us today?
Good evening. Yes, I am. I'm traveling, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Yes, so I'm also with Warren, which I believe some of you know Warren. I think he's in the room.
Warren is in the room. Warren, would you like to come up to the microphone? Thank you. Bear with us 1 minute, Brandon.
Absolutely.
Hi, Warren Lewis. I'm here, Brandon.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so thank you so much for letting us address the board. So one of the things that Warren and I have been tasked to do is have a discussion about what that looks like in that space. Knowing that the charrette's coming up, we thought this would be a great time to start the ball rolling with some ideas about some concepts about what we could put in there and what would look good and what based on town needs, et cetera, as well.
May I comment? Please. Just for clarity, the space being 43/45 Main Street, which is next to the Flying Monkey.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Correct. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Which is now vacant.
Which is now vacant.
Yes, slightly.
Recently demoed.
It's quite vacant.
Recently demoed.
Yes.
I think we're in the best position to offer feedback and thoughts on conceptual ideas that are brought to us. I don't think it's appropriate for us to actually give you ideas on what could potentially happen there or what the town would want to see there. Good news is,
yeah, I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. There's a little bit of a delay. Sorry, I apologize. Yeah, I think for this discussion, we have, Warren. Warren has an idea that we were going to talk to you about as well, but it's more of a collaborative as well. It wasn't necessarily so. I don't think we were specifically just asking, hey, tell us what you need or something like that. It was more or less, we have an idea. This is an idea. Conceptually, what do you think? And then do you have ideas that collaborate with that? I think that's kind of the flow that I was expecting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Warren.
No, I think that's fine.
yeah, that sounds great. And then in tandem, we're actually, you might have heard during the opening, is that we're also forming an economic and development committee in the town of Plymouth, which Joseph is the head of. And it sounds like everyone's been appointed to that. So in addition to tonight's conversation, it also might be beneficial to talk with them as well. But please, Warren.
That was one of the reasons that Alex is interested in getting some input from you guys. He obviously wants to do something that would benefit the community. I mean, the basic concept would be some retail on the main street level, some apartments up above, maybe some parking in behind. That's pretty basic what we're looking for. But if there's any other input that you guys may have to help with your development, Alex is really interested in getting a little bit of feedback from you guys before we pursue even getting that stuff really designed and laid out and that kind of stuff, and especially with what you have for upcoming developments. Mostly it's an introductory thing to say, we want to work with you guys, with your team that you got coming in, to see if there's any way that it can benefit both of us.
Just to clarify, I was writing notes as you were talking. So apartments up above, retail, first floor, and something else down below?
Oh, down on the lower side, like a walkout for additional for the business aspect of it, and then there would be parking out behind to try and keep that.
So residential just on second floor.
Just on the second floor, just a few apartments or whatever would fit up there.
Mm-hmm. Kind of classic Main Street setup.
Classic Main Street setup. That's why, I mean, that's the basic formula for that area, but if there's something else that you guys may, especially when the development people come through and start giving some ideas of some other way that could help to revitalize that area a little bit and bring some more stuff down there.
I guess that's my thought. Like, I wonder what that backside might look like. I mean, a lot of the back ends of the buildings right now, are kind of the backside of the buildings everybody's supposed to look at. And if we do bring more eyes down there in a positive light, what could that look like?
Yep. Yeah. That's why we're going to get in early when you guys are starting to put the stuff together and say, how can we be a part of that and not a problem?
How much parking do you have there now behind those two lots?
So there wasn't any parking there before, the way the buildings were stretched out, but I believe with the way the layout is, I bet you can put, not a lot, but 10 or 12 spots back there. We'd have to do a formal plan and put all that stuff together and, put all the little cars in there and see how they fit, so to speak. But that's the general idea of what we're looking at.
Of combining the lots?
I would think maybe combining the lots, or we keep them separate like they were, but I think especially in the back, combining that parking area to make that work, is save a little bit of the parking up front and give either whoever's in the businesses a little place to park, or whoever's up above a place to park. You could have some deliveries back there, that kind of stuff. But again, it's very basic now as to the thoughts of what goes there, so there's a long way to go, but the idea was to involve the planning board. We spoke with Scott Whedon. He suggested that we come and sit with or speak with you guys tonight, just to
I recall someone noting that the property boundaries on Railroad Square are not the most convenient for the property owners and businesses down there, and now I understand why.
It really is not.
It's really, no, I think with the,
In a perfect world, there could be a couple of realignments down there that would make the world a little better place.
Are any of your property lines disputed? I know there's some question about some of the property lines as well, I think.
Yeah.
Or are they all pretty solid?
I can't answer that question for sure. I can't.
So how many units are you thinking potentially? And I'm not sure you've gotten that far. And like,
I would
you
think it's about 80 feet. It's about 80 feet wide. So I don't know, 4 units upstairs and maybe 3 retail spaces, or
okay,
one that can be connected together and partitioned out. However, whoever the need is for whatever business might want to go in there.
have you considered, so there's always a demand for parking whenever there's an event at the Monkey, and I'm wondering if you know, like a concrete parking structure on the Railroad Square level would be
So
feasible.
we've talked about that, and when you start to look at the size of the lot
Yeah.
and how many you could get there with different levels,
Limited.
there is a way to do it with 3 separate levels and access on each side, but it really still limits the amount of cars. And then
Yeah,
the cost of putting that in versus the benefit
right.
without doing a real
But I mean,
engineered study.
right.
Yes, we have thought about that, and if you guys have a way to make that work, we're open to the idea.
I think obviously, you know, the need for parking is there.
For sure.
And you know, there's really no time like when you have a blank slate to
Exactly.
really, it's the most cost-effective time to accommodate it.
Exactly right.
So,
And
But-
we're not
but I
looking
mean,
for answers today by any stretch of the imagination. I just want to plant the seeds for you guys.
Yeah.
So if anybody has a,
the thing with a parking structure is a lot of that is taken up by like drive space. And when you have a small lot to deal with, you're
right.
sucking up a lot of that just by getting the cars around.
there is.
Exactly.
I've looked at it a little bit, and it's conceivable that you could have a parking area with 3 different levels without ramps and stuff like that. One from the main, one about halfway through, and then one on the bottom. I mean, theoretically, you could do that. I think there's space there. I still don't see cost-wise versus.
Yeah.
I don't know how that.
I was just thinking about, like, you know, Railroad Square level, just one floor, and then do retail at Main Street level, and then do like residential above. But you know, it's kind of up to you. I mean, you guys have
Sure.
it's your slate.
I agree with that, but we really appreciate the input that you guys may have, because Alex really does.
I was
want to
also
help.
just wondering, depending on what, you know, first floor retail looks like,
Yep.
and whether that would be a, you know, things to purchase or food or what have you, if that could even lead to a, some kind of like opening frontage patio for eating or something on the backside, because, you know, you've already got grotto back there,
Yeah.
like within eye shot.
Yeah.
And it could start to create some interesting visual connections and a space to be,
You are correct. That might be a cool concept to go through there,
depending on if it works, you know,
Yeah,
depending
oh,
on the
for sure.
space. But
for sure.
have you considered a 3rd floor, or is that really like a no-go?
A 3rd floor, or
You need to make
Yeah.
it from Main Street to go 3 stories up.
I mean, it's a tight 3 stories, but I mean,
I would say we have not considered that. My thought was
Okay.
the retail on the 1st floor with some above, but then you're also dropping down a level in the back where you would have access for, like I said, either additional retail space down there that you could access from either side, or just where you can come in for maybe deliveries or whatever you might have for your
Isn't our limit 35 feet?
35 feet, which we've seen
But
3
did-
stories squeezed into. It's a tough
But
squeeze.
didn't we redefine how you measure 35 feet on Main Street to say that it's measured from the street
It is.
elevation?
So
not
you
from the
could
average
shree
site elevation?
stories
So
in.
you could
It'd be a
do
tight 3
35 feet
stories.
from street
I
elevation.
guess my first concern would be if you're going up, would you be thinking more living space above there? Or,
Potentially.
because then you get into more parking issues, I would think, because
Mm-hmm.
it's already tight with parking. Not that I'm not saying I don't want to go that
Yeah,
route. if it's
I was
feasible,
just thinking from the point of view of making the investment in this space as worth it as possible
Yep.
and as cost effective as possible.
Yep.
If that would work to have a 3rd story, that could like offset some of the costs long run of
Yeah.
the
For
construction.
sure. Like I said, my biggest concern would be the parking, and we
Yeah.
have some parking out back. I just don't know that would be enough to support
That much.
the retail space as well as 2 stories full of apartments.
And I think that concern you have with parking is historically often a concern that the board has seen when new housing would be introduced
course.
downtown is parking.
Yep.
Yep, I think that's echoed. But I think with the charrette coming up in April, I don't know what your timeline looks like, but it could be very interesting because, you know, I can't speak for the future, but Railroad Square might have a whole new look.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Potentially
foresee,
in its decade, you know, it'd
Yeah.
be over.
I don't foresee us doing anything until next spring anyway. So, so I think we have some time to play with that, especially with, like you said, the charrette or whatever that is. That's
Yeah, and we would love for you folks to be part of that conversation.
that would be good for us.
Too, because it could have an, you know, that's that entire space down there, you know, up to, you know, the other side of the senior center, all the way down to the skate park, really,
Yeah.
over to the river and up to Main Street.
Yep.
Could really have a different vision over the next couple decades.
Right.
And it's worth noting that even without us doing anything, it's already starting to happen. Like what was a garage is now grotto, and like we're already kind of sliding down that hill in some ways.
It's going to happen.
One of my thoughts is, you know, oftentimes anytime there's a disturbance or a fire, it can trigger, you know, if there are any non-conforming uses that you have an interest in continuing, there are timeframes that you have to observe in terms of reinstating those uses. But, you know, that's, you know, I don't know, honestly, I don't even know that the uses that were there were non-conforming. It seems like everything that was there would be allowed if you wanted to
Yeah.
do the same thing under the current zoning. So, you know, that might not be an issue, but in general, like, anytime there's a catastrophic loss that's untimely, you know, it's good to be aware of those timelines.
I will take that under advisement and look into that in case there's some
Yeah.
window that we might miss.
Yeah, I mean, they're, you know, because, I mean, non-conforming uses are one thing, but, you know, area, there can be non-conforming areas as well where you might be looking at a different footprint if you rebuild outside of a time frame.
Yep.
Just be aware of those things. as
I know
well.
it. I will. Thank you.
It's also worth considering. Oh, sorry.
You're good.
So we're doing a brownfields assessment of the property across the street.
Right, we are.
And that will likely lead to a separate kind of charrette light-like process.
Yep.
And so you might have another neighbor across the street as well,
Sure.
which I'm not sure really affects what you're doing, but it's just kind of interesting to think about the
Yep.
kind of really kind of livened up space over there.
Yeah.
Do you mind saying for the record what the brownfield assessment is, just for the people listening?
So through the Lakes Region Planning Commission, Plymouth was, or with kind of them helping to organize that, got a brownfield assessment of the soil and land there in terms of the uses that were there potentially contaminating. And part of that process, which is seems to be like a new thing for this sort of process, involves an attempt to re-envision what that could be and kind of get that ball rolling. Because what's happened in the past with a lot of brownfield sites is they get assessed, they get cleaned up, and then it just kind of, the ball gets dropped and it just still stays a vacant lot.
Over the wayside, sort of.
And this is supposed to kind of jumpstart the process of not just leaving a vacant lot after it's cleaned up, but actually like using it for something.
And it
Thank
is a brownfield there because there was a hotel that burned down.
And there was apparently
was
construction
land.
storage and all
Yeah.
kinds of other stuff after that.
Yep.
Right, thank you.
That might be a great place for a parking garage too.
Honestly, I think there's we have talked about the terrace, you know, they're extending parking above kind of that interim street in between those two. That might be a good way to do that, is have a parking structure that connects those two.
It often
Crawling
seems like,
away from the.
it often, we are getting a little off topic, and just my one comment on that is, it often seems like it's more trouble than it's worth for the few spots you get.
Yeah, right.
Despite the catastrophic loss of the fire, in some ways, the timing of getting the charrette and you having this conversation and the formation of the Economic Development Committee is good timing,
Yeah.
depending on your speed of development.
I don't think we have any immediate plans to start doing this stuff. I think Al really does want to work
So I think,
with
yeah,
all the stuff that's coming up.
I think this conversation feels a bit early to me because I think that there's still so much to discover in the next 6 months. Or
I don't disagree with that. We when we met with Scott, like I said, he started telling us about the stuff that's coming up.
yeah, no, I think it's great you're here.
And he said, come meet you guys.
It's awesome.
Well, and not only here, but like, have your voice heard in the charrette process as well.
Absolutely.
Love that.
I do love, you know, what's happened on South Main Street in Concord. You know, there's been a lot of redevelopment in the past 20 years. It was not unlike Plymouth now 20 years ago, and you know, when you look at the investments they've put into buildings there, and the economic engine that has created for restaurants, nightlife, you know, office space, it's really an asset to Concord. And you know, I don't think that revitalization or reinvestment of a property that's had this kind of loss is inappropriate. You know, I think this is a great time to look at that and say, you know, what.
Perfect.
Yeah. You know, and I love everything. You know, the character of projects that Common Man tends to do is it's unique. It really draws people to our area, and I think, you know, the goals of the Economic Development Committee. You know, I have a hard time envisioning anything that Common Man would do there as being a detriment. You know, like I think, you know, any investment is really going to be certainly better than what's there now and what was there. But I have a lot of optimism for what it could potentially be.
I think it has a lot of potential. It's just a matter of finding the right spot.
Right.
Certainly. Brandon, I know you're on a slight delay tonight. Do you have any comments, questions, or concerns?
No, this is great. Yeah, I think again, when we met, it was all about getting the ball started, introduction, and then, you know, collaborative between the charrette and whatever else we can do to kind of, you know, out and really kind of put a home run in that area. I think it's, you know, that whole area is starting to really take shape. Like, I think it was, I feel it was Phil that said that, but I'm driving, but it sounded like Phil's voice. Is that Phil talking? Hey, Phil. Yeah, no, but I mean, you know, there's just a lot of positive things going on down there. And one thing you're absolutely right about is the qualitative measure of Common Man, you know, and Warren's, you know, great example of that as well, because he's seen it and been through it all. So I'm excited to see what we do. So next steps for us, I think, are just actually, what are the next steps for us? Well, what do we want to do?
I think the next step is to, we'll come up with some of our ideas and we'll match them with whatever charrette comes up with, and so forth. And it'll take a little time, but we'll
plan to participate in the charrette when it
plan to
comes
participate. I think that's really the next step.
I just have like a random idea I showed to Molly. Since there's big common ownership, and we're dealing with a not very tall building next door, I don't know what the structural issues are or anything else, but have you considered the roof garden on top of the monkey?
Yeah. If you're on top of the monkey, there would be no
Do you want to
roof
speak
gardens
upon that
on
more
top of
tonight?
the monkey.
Thank you.
No roof gardens.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
The only thing I'll say is, you know, next steps. I mean, the ball is in your court, but it's been lobbed.
Yes.
Like, it's we want you to succeed.
Thank you.
All
right.
Yeah.
We'll do some heavy thinking on it as well, and bring it to you guys and talk to the upcoming boards and stuff.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Brandon.
Yes, thank you so much.
Take care, Brandon.
Yep. Enjoy.
Before we move on to the next item on the agenda, I'll open the floor up for public comments. If anyone is here to comment on the conceptual consultation that we just went through. No comments? All right, perfect. We shall close the floor and move on to the next conceptual consultation we have tonight of 312 Fairgrounds Road. Is Tanya LaChance with us tonight? Tanya LaChance does not appear to be with us tonight. I'll open this up to public comment. Is anyone here to speak upon 312 Fairgrounds Road? All right.
Anybody online?
Anyone online?
Looks like it's just 2 town halls
Oh.
on Zoom.
Other town halls checking us out, see what we did.
They're cheating.
All right, well, if Tanya is not with us tonight and no one is here to speak upon 312 Fairgrounds Road, we will move on to item number 7 on our agenda tonight. Ending tonight's conceptual consultations, moving on to other business from members of the board and the planning staff.
We're not doing.
All right. So, other business, Joseph, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, sure. So, at the last meeting, the board had a couple of requests for more information on, in particular, items related to large commercial uses, which stemmed from a discussion of the commercial uses listed in the Tenny Mountain Overlay District potential zoning amendment. And then there also were a couple of questions about basically the ground floor facade requirements in the village commercial zone. So there is some information in your packet with regards to both of those items, and Avery did a lot of this research as well, and so we were able to give you, I hope, some good examples at least of what it looks like to have commercial facilities of various sizes, ranging from 1,000 to over 700,000 square feet. Obviously, a picture, 2-dimensional or a 3D picture is still a little hard to envision scale. But hopefully, perhaps some of you might be familiar with some of these buildings. At least, it's some frame of reference when we talk about 100,000, 200,000 square feet. And then there are a couple of points in the attached memo with regards to some of the definitions and terms cited in the overlay district. So the overlay district proposes 3 uses that the board asked for, in particular: manufacturing, 200,000 square feet, research and development or testing laboratory and warehouse. Just a quick comment, word of caution, I suppose, or something to consider. Manufacturing is not currently defined in our zoning ordinance or in the Tenny Mountain Overlay District zoning amendment. It is a part of our definition of industry, but our definition of industry also uses other language as well. So that is something to think about, whether we want to keep manufacturing in the TMOD language as it currently stands and defining it as something other than industry, or perhaps using the same term of industry in the TMOD. Sometimes you see light industry, heavy industry, manufacturing carved out into separate definitions, but that is a fairly complex question. It could be as simple as, do we want to just use the term industry, which we already use? The second piece to that, there's a term called research and development or testing laboratory, which the board asked about. That one is, so research and development has a definition in the Tenny Mountain Overlay District draft zoning amendment. which is similar to, but not exactly the same as our zoning ordinance's current definition of research laboratory. So that's another one to think about, because testing laboratory is not defined in the Tenny Mountain Overlay District. So perhaps it would be better if we're saying research and development, which is defined in the overlay, and testing laboratory, which is not defined. Perhaps that should have been a reference to research laboratory, which is defined. And then the last one is warehouse, which is in our current table of uses, but lacks a definition. So right now, I think, more or less, we would probably just go by something of a standard definition for warehouse, but if we did want to define that in a particular way, we could consider that. We do have related definitions. We have commercial storage facility. Often those definitions are somewhat similar to warehouse, though distinct. Wholesale business definition also includes warehouse. Obviously, usually would be warehousing in service of that wholesale business. And then we also have a distinct use called truck terminal. So that's hopefully not throwing too many terms out there. That's just kind of summarizing the questions raised in this memo in response to the three uses that the board highlighted in the discussion last meeting. And they are perhaps worth thinking about in each case. None of that I would say is huge on its own, but they are worth thinking about whether they could be better harmonized with what we have today. And then there are also a couple of just exemplary definitions from other towns of related uses as kind of some inspiration, food for thought. And then I'll quickly summarize the other one too, unless you'd rather I wait, and if you wanted to talk about the Tenny Mountain stuff first. The other item cites the ground floor facades in village commercial.
Yeah, I think we'll tackle the Tenny Mountain stuff right now, and then we can touch base on the ground floor stuff after that.
I had a thought.
Let's hear it.
For the manufacturing versus industrial uses, industrial can be quite broad, and it might include things that we might not want to see there. And it might be a good idea to narrow that down with a separate manufacturing use. And I'm not sure how that kind of, is that a sub-use of industrial then? I mean, in terms of like how it would look in definitions, it would still be part of industrial, I suppose. Like the same way we have housing as a definite, like residential as a definition and different types of residential, would that be the same sort of thing where we'd have industrial as a definition and then a particular type of industrial, which would be manufacturing industrial or something?
Yeah, you certainly could. It would actually, this way we define civic uses would be a good way to get at what you're saying, which is we say civic uses as a term, and then we sub-define civic uses limited to public safety, civic uses limited to public safety and office. So perhaps you could envision a definition of industry which says industry, and then has a separate definition, industry limited to light manufacturing.
Yeah.
So if I can point out, our current definition of industry says assemble, manufacture, processing, packaging, or other operations to goods or materials. The processing or packaging gets into the warehousing pretty quickly, but I think they're both, I think it's part of the goal of our draft language already. I mean, I don't.
I guess my concern, we've talked in the past about the processing part in particular, potentially involving like earth processing as well. And we've had conversations, probably about a year ago, we've had conversations about that. And I'm not sure that's what we want to see there. And that was really my only thought that was coming to mind. Like some of that processing use could be quite broad.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we want to fully encompass that within the overlay. I'm not sure anybody wants to do that within the overlay, but they could if they had enough land to say, well, I'm doing an overlay. It's going to involve earth processing and a big pit.
I was going to say, can we somehow limit it to be, processing that can be done inside of a structure and contained? Seriously.
Tent over the pit.
It seems like if our concern is compatibility with surrounding areas, do we want to leave it that broad? So my thinking is rather than make this more complicated and include new definitions, can we use our existing definitions and replace the definitions in our draft to include some of the definitions we already have. Maybe we want to look at just kind of tweaking the definitions of what we have already in our zoning.
I think that's important, is that, because historically we've seen how convoluted things get when
We
multiple
introduce new
definitions are crossed
definitions, yeah.
So I think whether it's,
Consistency is good.
even if we're updating our definitions in that, I think that'd be prudent, but I do think the mirroring of it is, for the future, better aligning.
Right.
Well, this could include something to the effect of, in the actual PMOD language, saying something about compatible uses with the area that might preclude certain types of industrial use,
Sort of pare it down a little bit.
to prevent things that, you know, like a big excavation pit, where we might say, this is not what we want to see there, and it should fit within this vision of the overlay.
Well, so talking about in manufacturing in a structure, that's when you look at the definitions provided in the packet about heavy industry and light industry, that's where we start to get those types of differentiations. So I think, you know, if we don't want to add manufacturing as a definition in order to get our definitions getting messy, but we do want to be able to differentiate between different types of industry, maybe that's one of the ways we could do that, is through breaking out the industry definition into light and heavy. Because there is a piece here from Dover, the second definition of light industry, if everyone's, I'm on like,
That was the emailed packet,
yeah,
clarify.
yeah.
I see some people flipping for it.
So I'll just read it. So light industry means all manufacturing and assembly processes carried on completely within a structure and involving no permanent outside storage of equipment or materials. And then there's except as customary to accessory use in connection with the permitted activities with the structures, unless such storage is approved by the Dover Planning Board. So the piece that I wanted to bring out the word structure there, since Phil brought up the idea of it happening in a structure. And then heavy industry is the processing or production of materials predominantly from an extracted or raw material, and may involve the use of flammable, explosive, or other hazardous materials. So that might be one way we can tackle it. Instead of adding something new, kind of becoming more specific.
And to Phil's comment, you see in the Tenny Mountain overlay manufacturing as a term that is limited a bit by the parenthetical, no more than 200,000 square feet. So you could envision a scenario too where that parenthetical says industry, if we were to change the term,
Sure.
which is provided such use is conducted completely within a building
Structure.
of less than 100,000 square feet. So you could use that use and then in the language of the TMOD limit it a bit. I mean,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I think that sounds good.
Trying to think.
So, and then we don't have a definition for warehouse, even though we have warehouse as a potential use that we're considering. It's inside of wholesale business.
I would like to say that the DHL facility in Bow that is in our package is gigantic.
How many square feet is it?
It's 266,000 square feet, and I recall I knew someone who used to own property that abuts that, and I don't know if he still owns it or not, but like when I saw his house and this in his backyard, I was appalled at the fact that, you know, it's, I don't think there would be enough land in that zone. I don't think there would be enough flat land in that zone to build something like this without filling in every wetland that's there.
That kind of connects really well into section H of the TMOD, number 2, which is the specific objectives. Every PUD in the Tenny Mountain Overlay District shall incorporate several of the following elements, and that's inclusion and mix of uses, architectural design, placement of structures on most suitable sites with consideration of topography, soils, vegetation, slope, etc., mitigation of view shed. I think if we tweak the language in that first sentence, every PUD in the Tenny Mountain Overlay District shall incorporate several of, instead of saying shall incorporate the following elements, and not make any of the elements listed here
Required.
optional, but rather something to be included. Because it's vague language that kind of opens us up for someone coming to us with one of these and saying, well, I included several of them, whatever several is. You know? And I do feel this section of the TMOD is extremely important in mitigating any of our concerns and probably a lot of the people of this town's concerns about warehouse questions, how warehouses look, what view shed impacts we might have if we allow that type of development, topography, etc.
There is a benefit to a HUD being a little bit flexible.
Right.
And I'm looking at things like use of traffic mitigation or traffic calming measures. That may or may not be
Necessary.
necessary in all cases. And I wonder to what extent we should just trust the planning board. We may trust ourselves, but it might be other members on the planning board as well, to make the right call in these interpreting several, and to what extent we should mandate these and thereby make the PUD a little bit more rigid. I don't have an answer for that. Let's putting it out there.
Comment.
Yeah.
I guess I feel like there are some that feel pretty non-negotiable to me, that I feel very important, and maybe use of traffic mitigation is less important. But when I think about these warehouse examples that were provided to us, there's a big difference. I mean, size definitely is a factor, but also what the building looks like is a factor. And so this provisions for quality architectural design is a piece that could mitigate, you know, getting a proposal that includes a warehouse that's just an eyesore.
And even having that as an option among the several gives the planning board the power to say, no, this does not do what we asked for.
Okay. You think that the language being vague is actually okay, that the planning board can still?
It lets the developer know what we're looking for within the context of a planned unit development, which is a fairly flexible framework, but you still know what we're looking for. And that's in the list. You know, if you're building something that's an eyesore, we're going to call you out on it. At least we should be.
It's at some point, unless you're in an airplane, and maybe the pilots from the
The airport.
The pilots from the airport might be the ones that are going to object to this, but like, you know, a warehouse is a warehouse. Like, you know, if you're looking at a 700,000 square foot warehouse, it's a 20-foot wall, whether it's 100,000 square feet or 700,000 square feet.
All warehouses must include a rooftop garden.
On that note, I've seen some. You go up through Bow, down that way, off the highway, and you see the big ones they had down there, like by the truck stop. They put a huge one down there.
I think that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that one right there
3A?
actually really isn't that bad looking. I mean, it's huge, it's big, but it's well designed. It looks good. It's not just some cement building like they threw up there. There was a lot of thought was put into it, I think, as far as how it was supposed to look, because it takes you can really see. You notice it. I mean, my wife, she's like, "Oh man, where did this thing come from?"
It's actually interesting.
It's a good looking. They had trees out there and stuff, and it was well done.
So that's the landscaping part of it too.
Yeah, that is the
Site
landscaping part
plan,
of it, yeah.
It's not
I
just
mean, the building part itself. I mean, for a warehouse.
There's effort.
Huh?
There was effort.
Yes, there was. Exactly.
It's interesting to consider, though, with all the elevation there. You could potentially put a 200,000 square foot warehouse on a 100,000 square foot plot of land with a front and rear entrance on two separate levels.
Yeah. Because you'd stack you'd layer and stack.
And you can't necessarily write that into this, but you know there are opportunities like that.
What do you think, Neil?
Well, I'm thinking about the soils. I know that much of the soils out there are high percentage clay and silt, and they're very deep. And you know, you're gonna be building floating pads.
Up here, a lot of pile driving.
I just couldn't see, I couldn't see one of those gargantuan warehouses out there. It wouldn't seem practical to me.
I agree, and you know, I feel that I think it's we're concerned about a self-limiting potentially. Like I just don't. I think we should accommodate some level, but I think the site characteristics of the area are somewhat limiting already. It would be very expensive. Like, you know, when you're on the seacoast and it's already fairly flat and sandy and well drained, it's easy to grade it out and put a 200,000 square foot warehouse in. But like when you're dealing with sites that are rocky and wet and poor soils, it's the civil engineering of putting a building in there is a challenge.
Can you explain to me why the clay makes a difference? What do you mean by floating pad?
It moves.
Okay.
Yeah,
It doesn't drain.
it does,
Okay.
It doesn't drain, and
So
it
if you wanted to
expands
dig a
and
foundation,
contracts.
it just
Putting a foundation in, I think, well, I don't know, I agree with Neil, because I know own the land there, I've seen it, and it's a pretty, not even terrain, I should say, you know, it's like you get a lot of different soils and stuff, I think it'd be expensive to put something like that in there, which I don't see with it, you know, unless it was small, so, I don't think it'd be a place that we would have to worry about. Someone going in there and building something.
I can see like smaller industry, like there's like an industrial park off of Etna Road in between Lebanon and Hanover.
Yes, something like that.
You know, small manufacturing. I can see a lot of that, like it being a good site for that type of facilities.
yeah, there is a kind of industrial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Russell
But
Town
it's small
Fair Tire,
facilities.
or Wilson Tire.
It's not huge. It's medium-sized facilities, and it might lend itself to that type of development. And again, the other thing I was thinking about, like anything with warehousing, like, do we really want 200 tractor trailer trips a day up Tenny Mountain Highway to 93?
Yeah.
Probably not. Like we can probably deal with ski traffic, right? But you know, tractor trailers on top of that I suspect is probably not going to be appealing for a lot of people. And it's, you know, proximity to interstate corridors is generally one of the things that they consider when citing large distribution facilities. And you know, I'm not sure we want to invite that to a site that's far west of our main town.
I know too, there's enough tractor trailers trucking up through that already. I mean, there really is quite a bit of it, if you really think about it, and to double it, I think would be, I mean, you see it everywhere. But just being where the fuel pumps are and stuff, and people coming out of Bristol, the trucks, there really is quite a bit of heavy traffic as far as trucks go on that road.
I'm kind of curious if we should limit the size of development to 150,000, which is slightly smaller than the current.
I think we should think about limiting the size, because I do get nervous when we discuss terrain
Yeah.
and sort of like saying the likelihood of someone building here because of the expense, because of the current condition, is minimal. That's what they said 50 years ago when people said they can't build on that hillside. That's too expensive. Now there's houses all throughout the hillside.
Or there's a Walmart.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so
They put in a retaining wall and a lot of fill, and yeah.
Right.
yeah, exactly. Where it's like, you know, the resources were there for someone to do it. So, and the zoning allowed for it, so it got done when no one saw it. Yeah.
So Phil, are you talking about that manufacturing question?
Yeah, I was thinking where we've got 200,000 square feet in parentheses.
Yep.
I'm thinking that you know, manufacturing, or so I was thinking like just changing that to match our existing industrial and limit it to 150,000 square feet. That way we don't have to redefine manufacturing and zoning, and it makes it easier to slide in. But
You read my mind, yeah.
I do think too that the bigger the building, if someone does decide to spend that kind of money on the site work, they're going to have to divert all that moisture somewhere. We have to start thinking about what's not in that overlay that's going to get affected by all of this, because it's going to get pushed somewhere. So
Well, and
I
that's-
think reducing the size of the building
that's what
will kind of defeat that.
that's the, you know, the drainage plans, like our plans are basically require, there's already a requirement that they treat runoff on site, and they have infiltration basins so that you don't increase the runoff from that site. So anytime they put in anything that's that much impervious surface, they have to create enough potential for infiltration. Like when they did Market Basket, like that whole parking lot has infiltration structures under it to allow all that water to infiltrate under the parking lot, as opposed to having like a detention basin behind there where it's like the
Running
south.
directly off into
Yeah, like if you look at
pond.
what they couldn't do that on Main Street, so there's that huge infiltration pond on the south end of Main Street by the skate park now. Like, but you know, when you look at like the Market Basket, they didn't have one of those because it's all under the parking lot.
The basic point being it's already part of our site plan review process.
Yes.
That we mandate this, and anybody coming in for this process is gonna be faced with the same necessities
Yeah.
to meet.
Can you explain that a little bit to me? Because my brain is not connecting those things. I'm thinking about the PUD as we get a PUD application and we look at the plan, and then additionally when we get a site plan.
We can't just ignore environmental concerns.
No, I
that
know,
are- yeah.
but if we were, let's say this is a thing that we have.
Yeah.
We get a PUD from an applicant. Let's say we approve the overall PUD. Then additionally, they have to come to us with a site plan review for that.
So keep in mind the PUD might be like one big developer,
Yeah.
and then they might say, all right, this parcel, like this guy is going to lease that parcel, and he's going to come to you with a site plan
Yep.
for his manufacturing
Okay, so-
facility, and
right.
that facility.
And at that point,
is
that's
going-
when site plan
That's a
review-
conventional site plan review for
Okay.
that, or you know the other, like there might be housing developments in the PUD, and this guy's going to bring you a subdivision plan for the housing development. This is going to be the the main developer might do the downtown area with high density stuff, but there might be other.
This is the master plan that.
Yeah, so this is
Oh,
the high
that-
level.
yeah.
Okay, and so then concerns about runoff then come after that, and we will have site plan review.
The
to
the
make sure
PUD is
that-
kind of like planning a new town, and the development within that town is going to be handled as it normally would be for a subdivision or a site plan.
Okay, thank you.
I'm kind of curious what Stephen Kelly thinks about potential research and manufacturing there at this point.
Yeah, since
The life sciences have
since
collapsed.
it's the bubble burst.
Honestly, there's probably so much. I suspect there's opportunity. Like we don't know what the opportunities are going to be over the next
No, we don't.
20 or 30 years, and I think we should be providing reasonable opportunity to create those kind of jobs. If it brings jobs to the area,
Definitely.
it's a great thing.
I was just saying that more out of curiosity, since we
Yeah.
heard so much about that. And obviously those plans might end up changing, but obviously whatever we design in this piece of paper here needs to accommodate all sorts of different plans.
So how does everyone feel on the size of 150,000 square feet?
What would the dimensions be for 150,000?
Walmart.
Walmart?
That's Walmart is
Big enough.
155,000 square feet in the
Yeah.
package.
it
A
too
lot of the
big?
drainage from Walmart is running down onto Tenny Mountain Highway and creating problems.
Is it?
Is it?
Is it just the access road, or is it?
Well, it's all glacial till up there, and it's on ledge.
Yeah.
So the water can't get much ground treatment, it's riding right on ledge. And then it goes down on the Tenny Mountain Highway, and that was built in 1953, and the drainage has never been upgraded. So, the state doesn't want to address it. It's kind of a problem for a lot of people along that highway.
I do recall the two developments across the street from the coffee shop. They've had impounding issues and drainage issues, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something I wonder about is, I know we'll have like a SWIFT or drainage reports and all these studies, but I do think like, all right, what about 3 parcels over, 5 parcels over, that's a headwater.
I mean,
Curious.
in theory, if you're allowing infiltration on site, you know, most of the studies show like they can, you know, the goal of those studies is to say that, you know, a 100-year storm, we're not going to see an increase in runoff from the parcel. Like they basically have designed their infiltration systems to handle a 100-year storm, and basically they have enough capacity to allow it to infiltrate on that site. It may be different than it would have been in an undisturbed place. Like it may be going in here instead of over there, or you know, the infiltration may have been diffuse over the entire parcel where now it's concentrated. So
But wouldn't Boulder Point have had this done, and now there's problems, like you said, across the street?
it's
If
not
I may,
perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, my way of looking at this is there's a potential for large-scale development all over town in many ways. And if there's a problem with recent developments and stormwater, we might want to look at that more broadly in our regulations and not just in the Tenny Mountain overlay. There might be a broader issue in how our regulations are written that should be addressed all over town. And we shouldn't just worry about how they apply in the overlay. We should make sure they apply everywhere correctly and in a way that's not going to cause any adverse impact on other parcels than the developed one.
I agree, but I don't think that we should pass the overlay to, I agree that if there's issues elsewhere, the whole town, but I don't think that's a reason to say, don't worry about it on this. We'll make sure we take care of it as a whole for the town, you know?
I'm gonna say, I don't think the overlay is necessarily where you want to write different drainage regulations and stormwater regulations. That's something we should potentially look at in our regulations, and if that really is a problem, and that recent developments have not drained properly.
We got into this. Oh,
And
sorry.
I think for the overlay, we just have to trust that our regulations for stormwater in general work, and if they don't, fix them. But that's like, I don't think that's an overlay problem.
Is there, sorry, Phil, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I agree. I think we're getting sidetracked. I mean, you know, our concern about this is concern about things that happen everywhere in town. And I think, you know, I think our goal should be to do everything we can to integrate all of our current terms in our zoning into our proposed language so that there's less incompatibility. But I think we're on good track to do that.
I think we're on a good track. I just hear you guys saying that, hey, it happens everywhere, so don't worry about it here. That's
No,
what
worried about it
that's
there.
what I
It
hear right
definitely
now.
needs to be worried about, because the more development you
And I
get,
don't
this stuff's
know-
gotta go somewhere.
I know what you're saying. It's like, don't worry about it. It happens everywhere.
I'm not, that's the exact opposite of what I'm trying to say. It's not don't worry about it because it happens
No,
everywhere.
you're saying don't worry about it here.
It's saying this is not the right
it
place.
happens
This
everywhere.
is not the right place to fix it. And the very fact that we're bringing up all these sites that are not there means that it's happening more broadly, and we need to fix it more broadly. So it doesn't happen at the Tenny Mountain overlay, and it doesn't happen along Tenny Mountain Highway, or anywhere else where we might do a large development. If something's broken, fix it broadly in our regulations, and don't just try to fix it in the overlay.
Not in this.
Yeah.
Can you request impact studies when someone brings in a site plan review or whatever? Can you
Yeah.
request them to do
And
that?
any site
I
plan
think
can
those are
require
really
that.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd probably be something that would be
Could
So-
we,
beneficial.
and we can,
could we put a restriction on large-scale development on poorly drained soils?
Can you speak more upon that a little bit?
I don't
Poorly
know.
drained soils, hydric B soils, soils that don't drain well, and you're not gonna be able to get ground treatment on poorly drained soils.
I think what they do is they just make you dig out more, put in more material that's going to allow it, and do more. I think, really, they will approve anything these days if you compensate for it somewhere else, and you've got the checkbook to do it.
the,
But yeah, I mean, you have to compensate them.
But you're right, I think we're getting off track here a little bit, but.
well, so it sounds like looking at our site plan regulate, because that's where that type of drainage management regulation lives, is in site plan review, right? And we as a board can amend that.
And it might be interesting, like, maybe as part of our spring agenda, who knows? Like when we get through zoning amendments, to look at like model regulations from other towns or something and see if we could do something different.
Yeah.
And the great thing about site plan review regulations is we can adopt them anytime we want.
Yeah, and if something is not
They
working,
don't have to go to.
they don't have to go to town, yeah.
We had also talked about, I think we had, at the beginning of the year, we had proposed considering a townwide wetlands ordinance, which could also affect how, rather than relying on state identification and protection for wetlands, we could have a town level enforcement available for that.
And part of that was waiting for the, whatchamacallit to come in first, the
Natural resource.
NRI.
NRI.
I was just thinking about the NRI.
Yeah, we did agree to wait on that, but like that, if we get the NRI updated and we decide to move forward with that, that would apply everywhere, not just here, and that would be another level of protection where we're not relying on state wetland protections, whether they're enforced or not, but we could have local protection.
Can we go back to this question of square footage?
Yes, please.
I'm fine with anywhere between 100 and 150 square feet.
I think we would be limiting ourselves if we
At
went too
100.
small.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd like 100
Yeah.
square feet, but I understand that it's not necessarily realistic.
I just don't know if that's. I
Maybe
would
too
too,
limiting.
personally.
Yeah.
I think that's a better fit, but I don't know, because I don't want to shoehorn into something that is limiting.
Yeah, I don't want to make
To a
it
degree.
unrealistic.
And this is for manufacturing or industrial?
This is for, what we're probably going, it sounds like we're in the mood to change this word manufacturing to industry.
I think we should change to our current level of, our current definition of industry and limit it to 150,000 square feet.
You want to change it to our current definition of industry.
Yep, follow those.
Not change our definition of industry as of right now.
What about commercial?
Worth noting,
Different.
different.
Different line.
Worth noting is that
Different use.
we do have some say over character and such in the PUD. And in terms of not warehouses, which make it much more difficult, but it's certainly in terms of manufacturing, in many cases, it might cost a little bit more, but there's a possibility of also doing a multi-story building, where
Yeah.
you're not just getting a one-story spread out
That's kind of what I
footprint.
was thinking
And
about.
especially on uneven terrain, that actually might even be cheaper in some cases.
I understand the concept. I do not, and it really doesn't matter because we can think about what someone's gonna do. I don't, practicality speaking, see multi-level warehouse or industry operations of that size. Because we actually spoke about that last meeting.
Okay.
Where it's like, what if it's 3 or 4 stories? I think Michael was discussing that, where it's, it's
Like,
a
can
good
they
question.
divide up their square footage, or if we
Or,
limit
like,
the
if you
square
do-
footage, can they do multi-level? But he was saying no, they actually need this whole.
Right, like, so if you do a warehouse, and we'll just use 200,000 for example, it's like the likelihood of 50,000 square feet per floor in a 4-story. This is exaggeration, but a 4-story warehouse facility is unlikely.
Like in a warehouse facility versus manufacturing,
Yeah, I'm sorry, manufacturing. It's a lot easier to run.
depending on what you're manufacturing as well.
Well, he used well, it doesn't matter. I think he said spoons or spatulas or something.
Yeah.
Because you're not running a forklift up an elevator.
Right.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, anytime you're storing large, heavy things, multiple stories don't really work well. That's why it's really cheap to build sprawling, like
It is.
square mile facilities on one level
I'm just thinking about
in
the
other parts of the country.
terrain limitations, which actually might almost make it worth it.
I don't think we can rely on that.
No, we can't. I'm just
Okay.
saying.
Oh, yeah.
No, I wasn't saying in a sense of assuming that's going to happen, but in terms of like going over 100,000 to 150,000, I can imagine a scenario where that flexibility to go 150,000 would be helpful, and I just I'm with Phil's original comment. I don't want to get into the weeds of like all the different possible permutations. 150 sounds great.
You don't want to get into the weeds,
Well,
John.
150,000 is still 3 acres of building.
Yeah, it's
big.
plenty.
And are we thinking that for warehouse and industry, or just industry?
I think warehouse and industry. Like, I think our definition of industry basically includes warehouse already. I was,
No, our definition of wholesale business includes warehouse, but we don't have, warehouse is not in our definition of industry.
it's not specific, but our definition of industry does say storage of, packing or other operations to goods, processing and packing of other, not storage, but processing or packing.
And we do also have truck terminal and warehouse as enumerated in the table of uses, but undefined currently.
Right. I mean, there are other, I mean, our model language, we have, I'm just looking down this list of business uses, and there are
Yeah.
things defined here that aren't in zoning already, like we don't define fitness center. I don't even know if we have boarding kennel, but like, I think we can do some work to like tighten up this list to either match our existing uses of zoning, in zoning.
Well, so, but the business uses allowed here intentionally aren't matching our zoning because it's supposed to be more expansive than our existing zoning.
Do we
Right.
want it to be that? Like, if we're gonna do that, we really need to consider adding those definitions to zoning. So if we're gonna add, like, if we're gonna have a bill to say to accept the Tenny Mountain Overlay District and add these definitions to the zoning ordinance, like, you can have one bill that does that. But I guess we're gonna have to think about that, like, you know, yes, we're going to have these very specific uses that are not currently defined in zoning, and part of the warrant article is going to say to include definitions for these terms. So,
I agree.
I suppose that's the most rigorous way to do it.
I think we have to, otherwise, like, you have terms that are undefined.
Yeah.
I think so, and just working these documents throughout the future is,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
it's a little more rigorous now, but I think will be beneficial in the future.
I don't disagree with anything that was just said. I just do want to kind of step back for a moment to remind us all that one of the benefits of the PUD is that it allows a great deal of
Oversight.
from the planning board itself.
Yes.
And I am happy we have a really thorough one. But there are communities out there with PUDs that are like a couple of pages long, because it gives that authority to the board itself to be more flexible. And that's part of the reason that you go with a PUD is for that flexibility, as opposed to just having like standard zoning ordinance.
But
And-
is the understanding that we're going to be dealing with terms that are not defined in zoning and they're up to the interpretation of the planning board when considering PUD applications?
No, this is why I said I'm not really disagreeing with anything you just said.
No, I'm really asking just for
but-
clarity. I'm not challenging anyone.
I guess I'm just thinking about this whole conversation and warning against over-complicating a document and over-specifying a document that's supposed to provide flexibility, both for the developer but also for the board to say what we really want in specific circumstances that we can't necessarily foresee.
If we're gonna do that, I think we should have a general statement that addresses that and says, this document is not as rigorously defined as the zoning ordinance. There may be terms that are not defined and are left up to the interpretation of the planning board in consideration of applications to the PUD.
No, I think for the terminology, I'm on the same page.
You think, we should define it?
I think it's not a bad idea. I'm just referring to like the general kind of conversation we're having in the last like 45 minutes now about how specific we want to be. And part of the benefit of this type of ordinance is that it does leave certain things a little bit looser. I think definitions are nice to have.
I think there are certain things though, like fitness center, like we don't have fitness center in our current definitions, but we have fitness centers in town. We're allowing them under commercial use. Like, do we need to define it specifically as a fitness center in the PUD?
The only reason I find this list to be helpful in terms of imagining, I mean, we have commercial uses which encapsulates everything from, you know, like a shoemaker to a hairdresser. At what point does that entail, that phrase commercial use encompass too many things?
I'm not sure that it should.
Mm.
I'm not sure that it can, honestly.
And so I can see how this list is almost also guidance for the types of things the community could potentially want to imagine there, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So in some ways just collapsing them all into our existing definition of commercial use where some of them might already live isn't necessarily helpful when a potential developer is looking at this document and saying, okay, what's possible here?
Yeah.
What do these people want to see here? What do they think is going to be successful?
Yeah.
Tricky.
A sports complex, what would be the size of the building for that, say, and I don't even know what it's referring to, with 150,000 square feet big enough? I don't know.
I certainly hope so, but it's a good
I
point
don't
because
know.
there's indoor fields that could be quite large. Yeah. So there's some things that maybe should be defined more.
So it depends on how big you want it to be. Like there are 2 hockey rinks together, not far from that
I know what you're
warehouse on
talking about.
3A. There's the Tri-Town Ice Arena in Bow where there's 2 rinks, and
So there's plenty of room.
it's not uncommon to have athletic fields where you've got 2 or 3 indoor athletic fields sometimes they're permanent structures, sometimes they're inflatable structures where it's just kind of like a vinyl cover with pressure to keep it up.
But although there is something to be said, I mean, I'm thinking of like resort areas where you often would do them in separate smaller buildings because it fits the character of the resort area better than necessarily something along a kind of quasi highway in Bow.
Again, as there's another like indoor sports complex in Bow that's fairly large, but has all these places.
I will say there's also a facility in Marlborough, Mass, where there's 10 indoor hockey rinks.
10
And 10.
together?
One under one roof. The second floor is basically like big open hallways where you can walk. Yeah.
But we might not want that.
Just been there? Played there? Yeah, good. Sports. It's huge.
I live in Bow where all this
So I mean, there can be
Keep
really
talking
big.
about
There
both.
can be there can be demand for I don't know another facility that has 10 indoor hockey rinks in all of New England. Like I can think of a couple that might have 3, but like two is a lot.
Yeah,
Especially in this area. But like I can think of areas like there are facilities down in Bow where they have indoor turf fields, and like there's 2 in this building, and then you go outside, there's 2 in that building, and there's another building over here with 2 or 3. So like, we're not in an area that's going to have that much demand, but I could see an indoor facility that has 2 athletic fields side by side or end to end or something like that.
So are you talking about, do we need to talk about the size in this document?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, if it's not limited, I mean, if we're not limiting it to if it's not manufacturing, I mean, technically the size of a sports complex could be unlimited, right?
Well, it could be.
I mean-
but to go back to, like, I'm thinking of other resort communities.
Yeah.
Again, they tend not to have these giant facilities because it doesn't really fit the character of those resort communities. And that is kind of what the goal is here.
Yeah.
We're allowing things like manufacturing and warehousing because it can help offset the capital needs of developing a facility like that, which is the only reason we're really even considering these things.
Right.
And ultimately, we want a nice Tenny Mountain recreational area, and I'm not sure you really need multiple attached ice rinks or something to get that. And if you look at most of those places that are nice, they have like a single ice rink or something.
Right.
And I think that's okay.
And then again, there's also,
I've never met a developer that didn't want all his options.
Right.
On the other hand,
Very true.
we're here to provide the limitations.
right.
That is our job in some way.
Well, and again, I keep calling it back, section H, number 2, the specific objectives and all of these things to be considered. Architectural design, placement of structures, mitigation of view shed, all that stuff is, again, I really feel a very important element of again, mitigating concerns the very legitimate concerns that we're talking about is that there's also built in to this document very reasonable, very important limitations
Yes.
to the uses themselves. so.
Just a note.
Oh, go ahead.
No, just a note to sports complex. We also, in our current zoning ordinance, define indoor recreation and outdoor recreation as uses, so perhaps worth thinking about sports complex, whether that is a useful additional term, or if it would be another one where some mirroring of what we already have, say, indoor or outdoor recreation could be just make it simpler.
Yeah.
Or if there's
Is
something.
that under recreation or indoor? Outdoor?
It's under recreation,
Okay.
I believe.
There we go.
So it might be worth it in our deep study of the TMOD to come through what definitions we have already and how the ones in this list differ or relate, or if they're really, really close. Compare the lists.
I think I'm on the same page, and I was I in some ways, again, to go back where I was, I agree with much of what is being said. At the same time, I feel like we're like overthinking this and really getting kind of lost in the details in some
Right.
ways. And I wondered, Joseph, we can give you some homework to try to reconcile some of the terminology.
Yeah.
Even further than we've done this already like in
Yep.
previous passes, but even go a little deeper,
Yep.
reconcile some of the terminology in a way that seems reasonable and reflects this conversation, and maybe like incorporate. I mean, does the 150 sound good to people for the
Yeah,
for the
it's fine.
size? And maybe incorporate that kind of chunking down of size, and I think it looks pretty good to go in many ways otherwise. And I think we're really kind of, again, getting a little bit lost in the weeds here.
Yeah. The value that I see is that if we do decide to put this towards the town, then we have a good understanding of what we're actually doing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But I agree with you, if Joseph is willing to do that.
Happy to.
We
yeah.
love giving you homework, Joseph.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it, especially when it involves making definitions align with other definitions. That's my
We know your
thing.
future is.
Are we giving Joseph homework, or are we giving?
The spirit of Frank lives on at our meetings, even though he's not joining
Regulatory
us.
alignment,
Aw.
right?
It can be designated as required.
Any other suggestions that people would like to see in this for the next iteration or moving forward?
I'll just make a quick note, just worth considering on the previous conversation. So in 2023, the board did revise the site plan regulations, and at that time did adopt an entirely new stormwater set of regulations. Haven't been a great deal of developments using that new set of standards, but that was something June had worked with Mike Vignali on to revise those. Certainly never bad to look further, but the current set of standards is relatively new. Also worth noting that the subdivision regulations, which also have stormwater standards, haven't been updated since 2002 in the stormwater section.
I think
We should look at
that
those.
should be a priority for next year, I think.
Can I say just one last thing? I forgot that Judy, the genius she is, included a definition section in this. Recommended amendments to Article 2. She includes boarding kennel, conference center, live work units, recreational ski area. So she provided some definitions that we do not have in our zoning that she did include in this list already.
Okay. Thank you for finding that. Yes. I'm very excited about this. I'm really optimistic that we can put this in front of voters this year. I think we're doing a great job of sharpening our pencils and getting our heads around it, but
I agree.
I think this is going to be a good thing for the town to consider.
Joseph, can I just ask a clarification, since you brought it up, about, and I know I was part of those conversations, and it's like completely like went through my brain like a sieve. So our updated stormwater guidelines, I imagine they were meant to make it more rigorous and bring it up to date with current like storm statistics and stuff like that, which are vastly different than they were like 20 years ago. And they weren't just updated to streamline it for developers, I would presume, from my memory of this. Can you have any more details? Like,
Yeah, I can definitely.
I know it's been a concern, so.
Yeah, I can give a little more detail for sure. So I think one issue was redevelopment didn't typically require stormwater mitigation. So the regulations put a threshold in place, redevelopment over a certain size required stormwater mitigation and a drainage plan. All new development now requires an engineered drainage analysis if it's subject to site plan review, and it has to show that it meets, let me just double check the exact storm event here. But generally speaking, an engineered drainage plan showing that does not exceed control the post-development peak runoff rate, so that does not exceed pre-development runoff for 2, 10, or 25-year design storm at each discharge point, and compare pre- and post-development runoff. System/pond overflows shall be designed to accommodate the 100-year design storm runoff rates, and stormwater volume control shall mitigate the increase in the post-development runoff volume to infiltrate the groundwater recharge volume.
If I recall correctly, we didn't have a 100-year storm in the previous version.
That's correct, and I think the previous only went up to 10, and I'm just double checking this, but I think the subdivision regulations also only go up to 10-year storm, and I think that was the major concern with the stormwater regs as they existed in site plan, that they really didn't, yeah, that's right. So subdivision regulations still, as they were written in 2002, only require treatment of, or no increase in runoff at the 10-year event, whereas site plan review regulations were made considerably, I would say, more rigorous than they were before in that,
So even,
have a drainage.
site
so
plan
even
isn't
there,
100 year.
potentially some of those developments like Walmart, which have become a problem,
We're probably under.
were under the old regulations, which they might just not pass muster today anyway.
And you could have, you could always look at whether this could be more rigorous. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are examples out there that are more. It is it is interesting that the subdivision regulations still only require no increase at the 10.
Yeah.
That is unusual. But
So sorry, site plan review, no increase at the 100 is now?
so showing that there's no increase at the 2, 10, and 25, and that system pond overflows can accommodate the 100-year.
Okay.
And then that also requires engineered drainage
Yeah.
plans for pretty much all large-scale developments, all new and some
Okay.
redevelopment.
I appreciate that information. It might be interesting, and when we have more time, like later or something, to, not later today, but to, do a quick comparison of some other communities and see what they're up to. But it sounds like we're headed in the right direction at least.
The other thing to consider is that, when I first started in planning, I was really concerned about the fact that, these were all based on, the 10-year storm, the 50-year storm, the 100-year storm, and the frequency of these storms is actually changing, but they're actually redefining the magnitude of those storms based on more recent data, and I think they're looking forward at, a situation where we may see a higher intensity of storms like this. If I recall, when I lived in Bradford, there were 300-year storms in 18 months. Which is,
3 100 years.
I can remember 3 100-year storms in a short period of time.
it was like 2003,
Yeah.
2002, 2003.
I'm
So like,
close.
by definition, a 100-year storm is the storm that happens once every 100 years over a long period of time. So to have 3 in 18 months is clearly like an abnormal data point for that long data set. But yeah, those are being redefined, which gives me more faith in the fact that we can rely on the 100-year storm, because the standard is going to change over time as well.
Every year we get more and more impervious surfaces too.
But I mean, the whole point of these plans is that even with more impervious surfaces, we're not allowing more off-site runoff during these storms. I mean, yeah, a 500-year storm, you might see an increase in runoff if it's designed for the 100-year storm, but
We might be worried about other things.
I think we'd all
Right.
be
We'll go
swimming.
I think we could use one right now with dry to
That's
this.
true,
We could
we
probably
could
use
use-
like a week or what,
I don't want a 500-year storm, but I do want some water.
Okay.
yeah, it's dry
That'd
now.
be
for
nice.
sure.
And Tenny Mountain Highway's designed for a 100-year storm.
The road itself is?
Yeah, I think
The
I think
drainage
it
structures
is.
on the road.
Yeah, was a military road. It was set up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Nicely, wasn't it?
I,
That was the only
I
reason
think
behind it.
our zoning ordinance calls for everything has to be at or above a 100-year storm, with where FEMA is concerned.
Well, moving on from Tenny Mountain Overlay District, everyone is good with that topic for tonight?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, there are some people in the audience, I was wondering if they were interested in this.
Some more of my victims.
Any thoughts about Bo?
Thank you.
You don't have to talk if you don't want to, you guys.
Well, we greatly appreciate it.
Joseph, do you want to roll us into the next bit of tonight?
Yep, I'll just give a little bit of a circling back to that. So the planning board also briefly discussed the zoning changes, the potential zoning amendment related to state law changes. One of those involved changing the special exception criteria for first floor, ground floor residential uses in village commercial. That prompted a discussion of the requirements that would remain if we took out the two that are now no longer legal. One of those being the facade, including windows, shall be residential in character. And I think there was some question about whether that was really the direction that the zoning had intended ground floor residential in the village commercial to go. So we discussed some of the design attributes that can in many ways characterize the commercial core of a main street. And the packet at the board's request, I gave some examples of some different buildings that have different physical definable characteristics that might make them feel more or less appropriate in a village commercial core setting. Now, whether the board wants to regulate those by changing the special exception criteria and instead of saying that it shall be residential in character, if the board wants to replace that with some more specific standards that get at some of the other design characteristics that help to define that commercial village core feel, that is a possibility, though simply complying with the law would leave us with two additional special exception criteria still in place, which there's nothing that says that we have to change that now, but I do think the fact that we're reducing it from 4 to 2 does prompt a little bit of scrutiny of those two, but doesn't mean we have to change those. Just a little bit of a follow-up from that conversation with some examples, and also the Main Street Plymouth design guidelines, which were a voluntary set of design guidelines adopted in 1999 by the Main Street Plymouth group, and these were non-binding. They were not a mandate, they were not out of zoning, but at that time, many of the business owners in the village commercial core agreed that they would abide by these voluntarily to help create a certain look in the village core. I think over the years, perhaps that they haven't always been observed. They were never binding, but many businesses have tried to keep kind of in line with these. So they also provide some interesting examples. And then just a couple of other pieces of information in the packet about kind of ground floor in a commercial core generally and what it means when that can convert from residential to retail and vice versa. So just kind of some follow-up information, and really the question is, you know, we don't need to address any of this to comply with the law, but we could, since we're already changing a part of those criteria.
I think it makes sense to consider those.
Yeah. Yeah, what is everyone's appetite on this? Consider it?
Well, we talked about waiting for more information from the charrette when we started getting into the weeds about this kind of thing. I do want to do that, but I'm also of the mind that if, in some ways, I want to just get rid of all 4 of these because I don't think the remaining 2 are helpful in any way. But at the same time, if we just get rid of F at all, I can see the benefit of having some kind of guidance remain in some way. But I'm on the fence about it.
Right, because we have the shred right around the corner.
Right, exactly.
Which will help drive some better informed decisions.
Correct.
What's Warren's last name?
That's where I'm torn as well.
So,
Lewis.
I guess my thought is, and perhaps you can provide guidance, Joseph. I mean, for me, the goal is whatever ends up being on the ground floor should be pedestrian friendly. And that can mean a frontage that looks residential. It could mean one that looks commercial on a residential property. It could just mean it's a door and a window or something, but like,
Door doesn't open up into the sidewalk.
well, I mean, and that's actually an interesting one because often for a means of egress, you have to be able to push it out rather than pull it
That's why
in
you
for,
said
that's
for,
what-
for fire
That's why we
safety.
have the alcoves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
On our Main
Yeah,
Street,
Yeah.
exactly.
just for that reason, the
Um,
pedestrian aspect of it.
So,
And snow removal, so you don't have to push.
I mean,
it with a pile of snow.
I don't know if our criteria is must be pedestrian friendly, right? But like, I think that's the goal, and that can look like many different things. What we don't want is just like a flat brick wall.
I mean, that is one
Like
of
this
the,
example.
yeah, that is
Yeah,
one of
exactly,
the goals,
yeah.
but I do think there's an aesthetic goal as well.
I'm actually thinking more about like the residential appearance for commercial buildings, and like it's not what we're talking about, but like when you, I don't know, like my brain keeps going there instead.
The residential use of commercial buildings?
Well, like their commercial uses of buildings that appear to be residential.
Yeah,
So
that's-
think
we're used
about
to
like
that.
Six Burner Brew.
Yeah, we're used to that.
Bistro, like
Yeah.
it's clearly an old house that's been converted to a restaurant. It looks residential, but like we're talking about the opposite, right? We're talking about a residential use of commercial space that we want it to be fitting. Like I'm trying to think about examples of
Yeah.
this that are already in town that we can.
Here's an interesting kind of counterexample to this.
Yeah.
If you ever like, go to Littleton, which many of you probably have,
Yeah.
walk around and look at some of the
Like on Main Street, you're thinking.
Some
or-
of the wonderfully, yeah, like Main Street Littleton, there's some wonderfully designed buildings, and there's some really bad ones. And they're all mixed in together.
Yeah.
And even the poorly designed buildings aren't really bothersome because the streetscaping as a whole ties everything together really well. And I'm not saying we should allow poor buildings to be built. But I am saying that, I don't want to be overly strict about what a good building looks like,
Right.
and put in overly strict design guidelines that everything looks like a cookie cutter. Like, I'm gonna put a little like dent on this somewhere because like I need an articulation in my whatever. But don't read into whatever. And I think an important thing for Plymouth to think about, if we're really concerned with the walkability of our downtown, is yes, what our buildings look like, but also how we tie everything together through streetscaping, which Littleton has done really well, and they put a lot of effort into. And it somehow allows the eye to gloss over some of those kind of ugly buildings.
Can you talk about streetscaping more? Like, what is it about what do you mean by streetscaping?
Like, interesting, like Littleton doesn't have any like trees on its main street.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's true.
But it does have beautiful planters and really nice lighting at a consistent interval, trash cans, and various other features like this. It has a lot of the signage, as we do in Plymouth as well, in certain parts of Main Street more than others. The signage that kind of bumps out over the sidewalk,
Yep.
which really defines the pedestrian space on the sidewalk and is readable by pedestrians, as opposed to on the building signage, which is more car-oriented. And a lot of those little choices, it gets down really well. Yeah.
John, they're starting to utilize the back sides of their buildings by the river.
They are,
They
yeah.
are, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funky.
It is. It's really, it's kind of exciting back there.
It is.
Yeah.
There's the brewery along the river, and there's all those little shops in the
Yeah.
backside. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to think about examples of like buildings that might be like a residential use of a commercial building, and like the one that comes to mind is like, I think the Plymouth Furniture Building has been for sale for a while. It would be really easy for somebody to buy that and say, all right, we're putting apartments in. Like, what if they just leave the glass, like they've got storefront windows there, like
What do you mean? Which building?
Plymouth Furniture.
Family furniture?
It's right across
Yeah,
from the
D&M.
You know.
the D&M building.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Places for sale?
Yeah, they've been trying to
I
sell
think
it.
they've been trying to sell it for a while, and I think there's first floor retail and
Yeah.
second floor like warehouse, or
Yeah.
like it could easily be 2-story apartments.
Oh, yeah.
townhouse type things, you know, I'm trying to think about like, all right, this statewide change would allow a developer to say, I'm buying that building, it's going to be housing, when it wouldn't have been allowed in the past. So, you know, how do we want our zoning to shape how buildings like that are treated? Can they just leave the glass storefront windows and paint them black and live on the inside? Or like, what do you do with those? Like, you know, it was clearly built as retail space, but if it's gonna be used as residential, what's our zoning do to treat that conversion?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, Joseph.
I've been struggling with the concept
that's a
of
good-
like where,
that's
put
a
one
good
in
point.
practice. How do we understand? Like, it's not specific to that building, but like there could be other places. Like, yeah, there could be anywhere on Main Street it could happen. And I'm just thinking that one's been for sale, and like it would be really easy for a developer to want to put housing in there.
Joseph included an article in our emailed packet that talks about this. It's from an urban perspective, but there's design guidelines in it it's from San Francisco, so very different context. But it says modulate facades and delineate individual ground floor entrances at 25-foot intervals. Create setbacks greater than 6 feet to enable usable transition spaces between an entrance and the street. Raise the residential first floor level to a minimum of 3 feet with stairs or a step to create separation between public and private space and prevent passerbys from peering through the windows. Design protected and identifiable entryways such as recessed entries, our favorite thing. Define setbacks and incorporate landscaping elements such as porches, patios, and landings, and incorporate screening elements. So, yeah. Fences, railings, gates, planters. Those are the types of things I suppose we could consider if we want, like, if we're imagining a conversion of commercial into residential, we could look at this.
Which is what we are now required to
Right.
allow.
Right, so we could consider these special exception criteria, or we could,
Although some of these are hard to achieve in an adaptive reuse.
absolutely, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's
agree.
another point here is, if you look at example sort of A in the packet and B, right, there's a couple of specific features that, you know, there's a lot of features you can obviously differentiate between these two buildings, right? But a couple of the key ones that differentiate these two examples are things like a clear delineation between the upper story and the street level facade, recessed entrances, large windows, exposed or visible lighting features, horizontal and vertical rhythm in some of the design elements, and also use of 3 colors are kind of key design pieces that if you were looking at a new build that were to have some of these features, those are things you might have required to bring about this building. Not to say those should be necessarily individually special exception criteria, but those are a couple of specific examples that you see in this example that you don't see in the bulky sort of monolithic example on the
What was the one right before the colors, the 3 colors?
there was the
Rhythm of horizontal and vertical.
oh yeah, the rhythm of horizontal and vertical design elements. So that's sort of your window placement with respect to each other, your sort of balance between the sides of the building.
Window, door, window.
As opposed to having, you know, a small window and a big flat, you know, monolithic expanse. It's, you know, again, each of these independently are things that are often required of new buildings that to achieve this kind of design. Doesn't mean they're necessarily going to translate great to a conversion, but they're things to think about, because you could also be looking, as we saw with, you know, the Flying Monkey example, there could be a scenario where a new build also wants to have ground level retail or residential, and that's another side of it. So it's worth thinking about both of those sides of the coin, because as written currently, upstairs residential is permitted, but on the street level you do need a special exception, whether it's a new build or a conversion. So those are a couple of
So-
key pieces.
Phil, you said something, we have to allow that, so we do allow that by special exception. So the
But-
state hasn't changed anything that we
But
have to do.
isn't this change that we have to allow it by right?
We do have to allow it by right, but you are allowed to require ground floor commercial. So the key is that we allow upstairs residential, or upstairs multifamily by right. The towns are not required to allow ground floor residential by right. That is a local option.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that's good.
So can I just, I mean,
Appreciate that clarification.
ask, we're not the first community to confront the issue, especially in the last few years, of the reuse of commercial real estate for residential real estate. And we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel here. Can we borrow from someone? And
Yes and no, I would say, because I think a lot of examples that are out there really are geared towards new construction. To be honest, I think a lot of these standards,
even with all the adaptive reuse lately, and
I'm sure there are some. I don't doubt, adaptive reuse ordinances as they've been adopted. I think it would require some rethinking of this blunt instrument kind of a special exception for ground floor residential, which really only allows you could add specific additional criteria, but some of the other tools may not. Other towns that have adopted more of a form-based code or greater form and design regulations writ large, I have not seen, and I have done a little bit of research, but I have not seen anywhere they've been applied specifically to special exception criteria. Doesn't mean they're not out there. They probably are. And as you said, this is not an uncommon trend around.
I mean, could a special exception criteria be, given that the zoning board has a little bit of leeway for interpretation, something as broad as like fits the character of like not necessarily immediately adjacent properties, but like of the current neighborhood, or which is really vague.
I don't think the
Too
zoning
we
board
should-
appreciates interpretation. I think they're trying to get away from that.
Yeah.
I think that's
Right.
because
But
everyone's different.
It's just so hard because there are so many different ways of achieving this that it's hard to really be very specific.
Well, I just think they would really appreciate a little more.
And we can remove the special exception, we don't have to, we can leave it broad right now. We don't have to build it back up.
Yeah, as you said, we don't even have to have additional special exception criteria. We
Right.
could just have the standard.
I would propose that we get rid of 1204 3F.
So instead of having any sort of special exception, we have,
I'm proposing getting rid of the 4 extra criteria for a
Yeah.
special exception.
yeah,
So there's still special exception criteria, just the standard ones.
Right.
right.
Yep, I think that would.
That works for me.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do we continue to have the conversation about adaptive reuse policies or anything like that, or do we just not worry about it?
I think we build that into potentially the shred.
I'm thinking to myself,
Oh,
anything that gets, or thinking to all of us, not to myself, right? Anything that gets reused is going to be already designed for a use downtown, which by its very nature at this point would be a commercial use, or specifically from the get-go as a special exception and a residential use. So it's probably not going to have the problem of being a really poor looking facade, just by the nature of what our current regulations say about what you can build. And I'm not sure you're going to prevent someone from just blacking out like a window. And I mean, I guess I'm saying I think some of the worst case scenarios probably in adaptive reuse aren't going to happen, because if it's an old building, it already exists anyway, and if it's a newer building, you have to build it to meet kind of commercial standards anyway. So I'm okay with removing the special exception criteria.
Can I
It's a long way of saying that, sorry.
expand on this a little bit, since we're discussing 304.1? So it says, in the village commercial zone, residential uses are permitted or above or below the street level only. Residential uses on the street level are permitted only by special exception. I recall we had discussed in the past inserting main into street level.
We had.
And I still think that's a good idea.
I don't disagree.
So, what's that?
I don't disagree.
So the way it would affect things is that, currently, think about Railroad Square. They put housing units down there, and they did put parking under there, but they might have done that because they didn't want to go for a special exception, where they might have had first floor residential on first floor in that area and just had parking alongside the buildings.
That was for flooding purposes.
And it might be. I mean, there might be other reasons, but there are buildings on Chase Street, which is Chase Street comes down between Biederman's and Hong Kong Garden and goes, basically the Rand's parking lot is Chase Street, right? So currently it says there's no first floor residential there, but it could, if we made the modifications so that first floor residential is not allowed on Main Street level, then there could be residential units under Main Street level, like off Chase Street.
That's not a flood zone.
True. So it could work there, but I if we're doing this, can we package this change to insert Main into that street level, and that would allow some additional flexibility for housing in that area?
So my thought would be yes, and probably not this year because we're thinking about it very late in the process, and because we're doing this charrette, which might cause, who knows what that'll lead to.
Yeah.
And maybe some people will want
maybe
to
it's presumptive.
expand that
Maybe we
into
don't
part
wanna-
of that area as well.
Yep.
Maybe we won't. But maybe once that's over, we can start thinking about that for next year and like how exactly we define that within the village commercial. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. All right, let's put that off until.
But I don't want to lose that
I think it would
thought.
prejudge the input of the public that we're going to get in the charrette to make that change now.
All right, that sounds good. Perfect.
Joseph, put a remind me, like 6 months from now or something.
Yeah.
April.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion about this particular zoning amendment? I think came to a good agreement for that. All right, if there's no further discussion, we will wrap up zoning amendments for tonight, if everyone's good with that.
We have no public. Or
We'll
unless
move
there-
on to public comment. Is there anyone online?
Claire is online.
There is someone online.
Yeah, it's my sister.
Yes, I am online, but I have no comment at this time.
Alrighty, sounds good.
I'm so disappointed.
We'll
I thought it
close.
was last time, Phil, you weren't there.
Yes, you did. All right, if there's no other public comments, any other questions, comments, concerns from anyone here tonight?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstained? Objections? Opposed?
Hey.
Hey, I have a question, aftermath question.
Thanks, Matt.
And then a business person came and saw me here a couple of weeks ago, who's a business in this town, who went to college here.